Welcome to the Prospective Doctor Podcast, where we will provide essential information for pre-medical students and those already in medical school. Listen each week for tips on how to improve your application and gain an acceptance to medical school.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining me today. Today I have Dr. Ziggy Udiano again with me. If you had listened a few weeks ago, Ziggy and I talked about being successful in college, and he has helped a lot of students find their own path through college and help them keep on track. And today I wanted to have Dr. Udiano again on the line so that we could talk about people's specific path to medicine and really how a lot of applicants make the decision to pursue medicine and how some things happen along the way. That could be bumps in the road or common problems that come up. Dr. Udiano, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to get started. How do most students get interested in going into medicine?
There are at least two main ways that interest in medicine begins. I think the first way is, usually due to personal experience. Usually the student or a close family member, such as a parent, sibling, or grandparent, unfortunately experiences some type of major illness and thus exposing the student to the world of healthcare. And I think for some, this experience has such a major impact on them, particularly because sickness isn't something you're supposed to think about when you're that age, that becoming some type of healthcare provider ends up becoming a calling for them. Mm-hmm. And the second way is that these students usually have family members with careers in healthcare. Usually it's a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, or an uncle who might be a doctor, a PA, or a nurse. So they get both consciously and subconsciously immersed in the world of healthcare through conversations that they either partake in or overhear. And I just wanted to add a cautionary tale to say that, while the two ways I just mentioned are really great reasons for pursuing medicine, I do want to stress that at the heart of whatever career decision that you guys make, the most important factor really needs to be internal motivation. As both Dr. Marinelli and I can relate to, the pathway to becoming a doctor is expensive, long, and challenging, even for the most diehard pre-med. And therefore, this journey will be really miserable, if I'm being honest, if you're doing it mainly because of external motivation, whether it's because your parents want you to become a doctor or because all your friends are on these so-called prestigious, lucrative career tracks like medicine, law, and business, and you feel pressure to do the same, when in reality, for instance, maybe what you really want to be is an English professor. And so I would just say that one of the most powerful tools that you should rely on, and something that we can easily forget, is, as you get inundated with all this advice from other people, is to rely on your gut instinct. I feel like gut instinct cuts through a lot of the riffraff, and it's kind of gotten me out of a lot of trouble and provided me guidance also.
Mm-hmm. That's such a great point, because even from my own story, I didn't have any family members in medicine. And actually, I lost my mom. She was diagnosed with cancer and passed away, but that was actually when I was already a pre-med. I was already applying to medical school when that happened. So my path was a little bit different. It was just kind of something that I thought, well, this could be a really neat career. I mean, it looks interesting. It sounds interesting. I like the intellectual aspect of it. I really enjoy science and learning. So it felt like a natural move for me. Mm-hmm. But looking back, I think I was pretty naive on the actual practice of medicine. And I had kind of inflated or unrealistic view on what the actual practice was when I made the decision to become a doctor. So that kind of leads me to my next question, Dr. Is if people are beginning to get interested in medicine, what should they do? What should be their next steps?
Right, absolutely. I think the most fundamental thing, and the thing that maybe students don't even realize that they don't know, is making sure that you as the student understand what a career in medicine even comprises. So, while everybody knows about the patient care aspect of it, that's the part that we all see on all the television shows and read about in books. There are actually two other areas of medicine, particularly if you work at a university, which is research and education. And the beauty of that is that you're not limited to just doing one area. You can do 1, 2, or 3. I've met many physicians who did all 3 of these things. Mm-hmm. And then, once you understand that, then you can go on to the next step, which is gathering information. I would start online, read reputable, informative websites, like Prospective Doctor, to begin getting a comprehensive understanding of this profession. And some of the things that you might want to research include, for instance, the types of doctors that you can become. Do you want to deal with general issues like an internist or a family doctor? Or do you want to specialize in an area like psychiatry or dermatology? And then you want to see what they do in terms of both patient care and beyond patient care, and then get some information about the training involved to become one. And then after you do this sort of secondary information gathering, try to do some primary information gathering. And that means, talking to doctors, and getting a more in-depth understanding of what they do, the challenges they face, and other insights. And then I would say the last, but definitely the most important step is getting firsthand exposure, which means shadowing a doctor. So if you can shadow a doctor in the area that you're interested in, whether it's pediatrics, urology, or ophthalmology, that is, of course, ideal. But even if you can't, you still need to shadow a physician. And I would start with either internal medicine or family medicine, since that's considered the bread and butter of medicine, and you would get a wide exposure at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is really the only way that you can get a realistic view of it, is actually just going in there and experiencing it. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Having that idea about medicine in your head and gathering what you have seen on TV, or maybe from talking to people, either you'll get that kind of confirmed through your shadowing, or maybe through the shadowing you will say, well, man, this isn't exactly what I would thought it was. Maybe I should look into something else, or maybe being an ancillary care provider or something like that fits my style more. So I don't think it's necessarily something shadowing is going to force everybody out, but I think it's a good confirmation step for a lot of applicants to go through, is kind of get in there, get your hands dirty, so to speak, be with a physician, see what they're going through day to day, and then really make that decision. Yeah, I can see myself doing this. This is really motivating me. This inspires me. And I think that would really help kind of solidify their path.
Absolutely.
So let's say somebody decides, okay, yeah, I want to go through medical school. I want to be a doctor. How early should they start thinking about this, and kind of when should this decision be made?
Right. Well, I would say ideally, and this is probably when a lot of students tend to do this, it's really good to begin freshman year of college so that you can start strategizing the next few years accordingly. And the reason I say strategize is because by the time you apply to medical school, you really need to have developed a unique, cohesive, and compelling story based on your academics and extracurriculars that'll then help distinguish you from the thousands of other highly qualified applicants. Mm-hmm. So in terms of academics, this means, for example, spacing out your pre-med courses between freshman and junior year so that you're not overwhelmed. It also means figuring out your major and fulfilling your school's academic requirements. Doing all of this requires a lot of meticulous planning. And in terms of extracurriculars, and this is the area where I think most students tend to drop the ball when it comes to strategizing, because I don't think they even realize that they're supposed to be strategizing. This really means focusing on just 1 or 2 areas of interest. And usually in terms of a pre-med, this is research, although it can certainly be other activities. And it's really important for whatever extracurricular activity you get involved in that you demonstrate passion, commitment, evolution, and results. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, if you have an epiphany about wanting to be a doctor sometime after freshman year, that is perfectly fine. Don't not pursue medicine because you think you're too late. It's definitely never too late to have an interest in medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's such a great point too. I mean, really to try to focus on a couple things at a time is so necessary to get through this grueling path as being a pre-med. If you're committing yourself to so many different areas, chances are you're going to overcommit and likely fail or do poorly in one of those areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a great point. When you're first starting out, at least, just find a couple things that really interest you, really motivate you. Maybe, again, trying to find those activities that are substantiating your desire to practice medicine, which is also going to look good on your application, like shadowing or clinical volunteering. Trying to just spend your time doing those rather than just completely overextending yourself. And that really leads me, I think, to one of my next questions are, what are some of the common pitfalls for people that are interested in medicine and they just don't end up actually making it to medical school?
There's one general pitfall, and I would say one specific pitfall that come to mind for me. In terms of general pitfalls, I would say anxiety and potential burnout. Being a pre-med is a stressful and tiring journey because it lasts most of your time in college.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take pre-med courses that are challenging along with their labs, and you're competing for top grades against other pre-meds. And unfortunately, sometimes this grading is based on a curve, which makes it even more stressful. And then beyond the academics, you have to think about extracurriculars, the MCAT, and then, of course, ultimately your applications, which is a mini job in and of itself, especially for those of you who remember even applying to college. And then, of course, if you're lucky, you get invited to lots and lots of interviews. And while that is, of course, very gratifying, it's also tiring and expensive. And so the culmination of all of this can be anxiety and potential burnout. So my advice for dealing with this is fourfold. First, as I mentioned before, you have to plan meticulously ahead of time, whether it's for exams, the MCAT, applications, or interviews. Because a lot of stress comes from feeling pressed for time, doing efficient and effective planning will free up more time for you, and consequently, you'll feel less stress.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is to have a great support system in terms of family, friends, faculty, and staff, and to be sure to lean on them when you're going through tough times or when you need advice. And then the third thing is, don't forget to have fun. This is something that can be easy to do when you're sort of immersed in the pre-med world, but you don't want your only memories of college to be about how you prepared for getting into medical school. It really should be about great moments and conversations you had with amazing people. And the last thing I would say is, in terms of the general pitfall, is if you're really feeling overwhelmed emotionally, get professional help from your university's mental health center. There's no shame in seeing a mental health professional, and you would be very surprised about how many students actually see one. It's no different than seeing a doctor because you have the flu or some illness, but unfortunately, mental health gets a stigma to it, although I think that's starting to go down. In terms of specific pitfalls, I would say the biggest one is probably organic chemistry. So if you just say those two words in front of any pre-med, medical student, or even established doctor, you will get some kind of reaction, whether it's a groan or an eye roll, I think. And I would say that this is because this is usually the class, in all honesty, that stands between many pre-meds and their dreams of becoming a doctor. It's just very conceptually hard for many people. But as an aside, I think I've thought about this a lot, having gone through it, and of course you have too, but I think one of the reasons students struggle with organic chemistry is because they study for it the wrong way. And so I just wanted to add real quickly that my advice for dealing with organic chemistry, it's a little extreme, but it worked for me when I did it. And I have to admit, I didn't come up with this idea on my own. It was my parents who, to say it nicely, encouraged me strongly to do it, which was the summer before I took organic chemistry, I created a flow chart connecting every single chemical reaction from my 1,000-page textbook. And then I hung the flow chart, which ended up, of course, being the size of a mini mural, on my wall. And every day during the summer, I sat in front of it and memorized parts of it until I had everything memorized. And then when I ended up taking organic chemistry that year, solving problems became the easiest thing in the world because all I had to do was pull up that flow chart in my brain. And I ended up getting a flat A both semester. And believe me, I was no Einstein when it came to science classes. I was below average smart at best. So I felt like if I can do it, anybody can do it.
That is some dedication. I feel like you probably could patent that flow chart. I can't even imagine. Wow.
I couldn't either.
That's a great point, though. And, just from my own experience, too, I struggled with OChem. OChem 1 wasn't too bad. OChem 2 was difficult. And it is one of those classes that is just notoriously difficult. And I almost think that some professors, they almost just kind of play on that.
Yes.
They're not as forgiving as maybe your biology 101 professor. They know that this is difficult. They know that a lot of people are going to try it and not as many people are going to make it through. I think in my OChem 2 class, it started out with I remember this, it would start out with 40 people. At the end, there was only 7 of us actually taking the final exam. I mean, and I'm not trying to brag at all, but I was the only one that got an A in that class.
Wow.
It was a struggle. I mean, I definitely did not always get A's, but luckily I ended up with an A, and that was a struggle. It was difficult for me, but it's kind of one of those, I think, just hoops that is set up that pre-meds have to go through. And I think, like you said, having a good study plan is essential, but then almost also just having this expectation that OChem is likely going to suck and it's probably going to be really hard. And
Yes.
I'm going to have to work super hard at it and spend a lot of time. So I think if you go in having that expectation, at least having an idea of its difficulty, it will help people do better. Because
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It'll make you work harder and prepare better.
It will. Because that was the thing too, is when I started, I had no idea it was going to be that hard. I was like, I think it's going to be hard. But once it was going, I was like, wow, this is really hard. And I remember, I think one of the first or second tests I got is C. And I was like, oh my gosh, my pre-med life is over. I'm never going to be a doctor. I totally catastrophized with that C. But then once I realized, okay, it's not over. I just have to work harder. I need to take my effort level up another notch. And I did. And I turned out to be successful. And I think that's probably the story of a lot of pre-meds. Just knowing that your pre-med path is OChem and other classes alike is probably not going to be as easy as some of your other friends' majors. Just having that mindset, I think, is important, but also was such great advice too, as you said earlier, is have fun and try to enjoy yourself too, because you're committing your next 4 years in undergrad, 4 years in medical school, 3 to 7 after that for residency training. You're committing your life to this. So try to enjoy every single step along the way. I think that's so important.
Absolutely.
Do you have any final thoughts or things for people to think about when we come to a close here?
I really just want to reiterate what you said about making sure to have fun when you're in college. I mean, I think we both said this. I speak from personal experience when I can say that I wish that I had taken more time during college to use sort of a cliche, to stop and smell the roses, because I was so busy immersed in my classes and worrying about the next exam and MCAT and all of this kind of stuff that I look back on my college years now and I say, wow, I wish I had done this and that and this. I can sort of enjoy it a little when I go back for college reunions, but I really wish that I could have turned back the clock and enjoyed a lot of the amazing resources and opportunities that my college had to offer at the time. But it was kind of like when you're a pre-med, sometimes you put on these blinders and you don't look at all the other amazing things. So I think it's very important to be proactive about enjoying your time there, to literally sometimes go into your calendar and schedule a time that says, have fun for 2 hours or something like that. Because if you don't, it's really easy to get sort of sucked into the pre-med warp where, you don't appear for like another 3 weeks or something like that. So I really think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I would just echo that too. I mean, and I feel the same way. Like looking back, I did not take advantage of, what college could offer. And I had this, mindset of I need to get my classes done. I need to graduate in 4 years, constantly, like you said, looking at the next step. I mean, looking back, I think I could have studied abroad. I could have taken some other classes or maybe even minored in something else I was interested in rather than just sticking with the sciences. So I completely agree with that. It is important to do well, but make sure that you are enjoying it while you do it, because you only get college. Well, most people only get college once.
Right, hopefully.
But most doctors only go to undergrad once. So
yes,
definitely take your time to really enjoy it. And like we were saying, get out there, shadow physicians. If you're not certain about it, shadow 5 different physicians.
Yes.
Just get exposed as much as you want to, or as much as you need to, rather, before you make that final decision and you say, yep, this is definitely the path for me.
Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Udiano, for joining us again. And everyone, please stay tuned. We'll have Dr. Udiano with us again in the future. He offers just such great advice and guidance. Please visit his website below, too, if you're interested in talking to him more about the path through college and getting some personal advising as well. Thank you so much.
Our mission is to inspire, encourage, and inform students as you journey through a rigorous and intricate process of achieving your dreams in medicine. Visit us at perspectivedoctor.com for more essential resources in your medical school journey.